Let me show you how to make the crisscross block. Now at a glance it looks really complicated, but trust me, it's not. It's just a case of getting all our pieces cut properly, placing them and sewing them together in the correct order. Now this block is part of my Mystery Block of the Month series, and if you don't know what that is, I'll put a link down below and you can check it out and join us. But for now, let's get on and make our block of the month. So to make our crisscross quilt block, you're going to need 5 different fabrics, and I've got this diagram here, and you can find a copy of this over on my website. I'll put a link down below. And what I've got here is what pieces you need to cut. So our A fabric, which is our fabric here, all these red colors, you need to cut 8 pieces at 2 inches by 3.5 inches. Then for the B pieces, it's 4 pieces at 3.5 inches by 5 inches, and so on. So cut all your pieces, and then what we're going to do is lay them out. So we've cut all our pieces, and don't forget I do recommend pressing your fabric before cutting. It just makes it much easier to work with. Now what we're going to do is take all our pieces and lay them out like they are in our image here, creating our crisscross block. So I'll just move them down. I'll put my C in the center, my B fabrics where they are, just like in the image. Now my B fabric is directional, so I decided that didn't bother me. I'm just going to face them all in different directions so that no matter which way you're looking at it, the block will look like it's up the right way. Oops, sorry, that one could go that way. Actually, I think I'm going to turn this one around. So it will have a right way facing up, but these 2 pieces are facing out. So just have a play with any directional fabric you've got. I'll place my F pieces in the center and just matching it up with the image. Okay, so I've laid out all my pieces to match my crisscross block. Now you might notice that it looks like it's not going to fit. This block here is bigger than this piece here, but that's just because we haven't sewn these 2 pieces together, which will take up some of that space, meaning that these 2 pieces will sew together then perfectly. So just lay them out like that and double check that directional fabric and that you're happy with all the way the fabrics are sitting. And now let's start sewing them together. So what I'm going to do is I want to sew these 2 pieces together from all 4 corners. So I'm just going to place that one down on top, and I'll place that one on top, this one on top, and this one on top, and then let's sew those 4 lots together. So just taking my first set, and now we're lining up all those edges. So we want both pieces of fabric lined up perfectly on the side here, on the top edge, and on this side as well. And then once we're happy it's all lined up nicely, if you'd like to, you could just sew or pop a pin in. But if you're a beginner, I do recommend pins. They are helpful to make sure things aren't moving as you're sewing them, or just placing them down to sew. So I'm going to start at the very beginning, not worrying about a back stitch. I'm stitching at stitch length 2, and I've got my scant 1/4 inch foot on, which means I'm sewing it's slightly smaller than a 1/4 inch, so it's like a few threads off a 1/4 inch. Just do what you're most comfortable with. That scant 1/4 inch does help get those perfect 12.5 inch blocks. Then I'm just going to come right off the edge. I'm not going to worry about cutting it. I'm going to take my next set and do exactly the same, and I'll repeat this until I've sewn all 4 sets together. Okay, cutting the thread on that last set, and now the thread that's just holding them together, I'll just snip that, being careful not to accidentally cut my fabric, and then let's press. Now we'll take each set and we're going to set the stitches, and like the name suggests, it just helps set the stitches into the fabric, making it stronger, and it also helps our block lay flatter. Then we're going to press towards the smaller piece, so opening it up, making sure these seams are coming this way to the smaller piece, finger pressing. We don't want any little wrinkles or creases in there, and pressing. And then I'll repeat that for all 4 pieces. With the pieces we've just sewn, I'm just going to place them right back down so that they match our image again. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two pieces and do exactly the same. So we'll have 4 sets. So just repeating exactly the same process. Okay, cutting our thread and then trimming the threads that are holding it together, being careful not to cut our fabric, and then let's press again. With each piece we're going to set the stitches and then we're going to press towards the larger piece. So making sure these seams are coming this way, finger pressing and repeating this for all 4 pieces. So now we're going to sew the 2 pieces together that we just sewed together. So it's important that we sew them along this seam here. I'm going to fold this one down so the fabrics are right sides together, and I'm just going to pop a pin in roughly there so that I know we're sewing along this edge and we don't accidentally bring it down and sew it along this edge, and then we'll address the nesting the seams in a moment. So just folding this down, popping my pin in up the top, and so on. Now we're going to sew them together. Remember, this pin was just reminding us to sew it along this edge here. So now we're going to nest those seams, and what that means is that one seam is pressed and coming this way and one seam is pressed and coming this way, which means we can nest them. So we push them up against each other so they can't go any further, or butt them up against each other. And then what I like to do is just open it up and just take a sneaky check to see that it's going to create a nice straight line. And then once you're happy, we'll pop a pin in. We also need to make sure these edges are lined up nicely. So I'm just going to go in on one side and come out on the other. If you'd like to, you could pop a pin in on both sides. Then what we do is we just check that the edges are still all lined up on the whole block or the piece. And these on all the sides again. And then we'll just sew just as we have been. And I'll repeat that for all 4 pieces. So cutting our thread, snipping those joins, and then let's press again. For all our sets, let's set those stitches again. And then we're going to press them. I'm going to press mine towards the bigger piece. It doesn't really matter at this point. So just making sure those seams are sitting nicely underneath, giving it a finger press and then pressing. Now, at this point, if you're not happy with how it's joined up in the center here, you do have the option of unpicking and trying it again. I just think you should be happy with it. If it's not perfect, it doesn't have to be perfect so long as you're happy with it. But if you're really not happy with it and it's quite a way off, then do just take the time to unpick it and do it again. Remember, there are no quilt police. In fact, you're your own quilt police. So as long as you're happy with it, then just power on ahead. And now I'll repeat that for all 4 sets. Now we're on the home stretch. We just need to sew our rows together and then we sew them together. So the way I like to do this so I don't accidentally muck it up is I'll place this one on top and pop a pin in here just roughly. I know I'll fix that up when I get to it. Then I pop it back down and then I take the next piece and I pop a pin in there again roughly, just so I know which seam I'm sewing and I'm not going to accidentally sew them in the wrong order. And I'll do that for all the rows and then I'll sew them together just as we have been. So now I've got the first set that I pinned together. I'm going to remove that first pin. I'm going to check all those edges again, making sure they're lined up really nicely. I will just pop another pin in or two, And then I'm going to repeat this step until I've sewn all my pieces where I pinned together. Now we're going to press, and I've put my pieces back down in the correct positions, remembering we've got our F pieces coming in, facing towards that center there. It's a good way to check it. Now we need to press the seams on one row going one way, one going the other, and one going the other, so we can nest the seams. So what I'll do is I'll take this bottom row here and I'll press them to my right, setting the stitches. Okay, making sure they're facing to my right. And then I just do like to give the whole piece a press, and then I'll repeat that. I'll take this next piece, but this time I'll press into the left, and then with this piece to the right. So I've placed my pieces back down so they're in the correct order, and all we're going to do now is sew these rows together. And you know the ropes, we're going to face this one down, sew along this edge, and just make sure there's 2 sets of seams there to nest. Make sure you nest those seams and pin, and then do the next seam, and then we're finished. Setting the stitches on those last 2 seams. And then pressing the seams whichever way you prefer. I think it's going to be easier to come in because we've got less seams to go against. Finger pressing and pressing. I'm going to give it a once over. And there we have our really cute crisscross block. So I hope you liked the crisscross block, and if you did, please hit the like button. It really helps me out. And if you're looking for another block to do, check out last month's block where we did the log cabin block. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.